Welcome to the Soul Archaeology podcast, a space for connection, resonance, witnessing, and learning. Together we'll harvest medicine from the spiral of life, sharing conversations with other embodied humans who have navigated their own initiations and found alignment with their true soul essence. With weekly astrology, energy updates, embodied conversation, and channeled teachings, this is a space for you to land and find resonance with the spiral of your own soul. Hello everyone, welcome back to Soul Archaeology. I'm happy to be here with you today. I'm recording from St. Louis. Welcome to June. Welcome to the fast-paced Gemini season. In the last episode, I talked a lot about Gemini. I talked about Jupiter and Gemini in particular, and now we're kind of moving into a deeper relationship with Gemini. We're moving into the midpoint of Gemini. We're moving into a 16-degree new moon in Gemini. Venus is moving into a Cazimi with the sun. So there's really interesting energy here around maturation, and specifically around the heart and the mind and the relationship between the heart and the mind. We have, of course, Gemini, which rules the mind. It rules our thoughts. It rules our daily lives. It rules our community. And so there's so much right now coming up around data, information, communication, how we are working with our minds and our hearts. Gemini also focuses on the relationship between the spiritual and material realm. So much can be coming up right now around the feelings of being a human, having this human experience in this physical body, while feeling this deep desire to merge and ascend and descend into the physical body more, descend into heart coherence, connection with the earth, connection with source, connection with self. And so when we have all of the things that require our energy on the physical plane, are the bills that need to be paid, taxes, building a business, parenting your children, all of the small tasks that really take up so much of our time on a daily basis. It's interesting because this Gemini season, it really feels like a lot of dualities coming up. I was talking to a friend about this morning, about how split everything feels. And that's such a product of Gemini season, especially with Jupiter and Gemini right now. We have the Sun, Jupiter, Mercury, Venus, all in Gemini. And that can feel very heady. It can feel like we have so much data and information coming in. We are being bombarded with to-do lists, tasks, social events, ways that we are honoring our humanness, all of the responsibilities we have. And we're also being faced with major spiritual and existential themes. We're being faced with a lot of the density that's in our own lives, in our own being, but also across the globe. And so there's so much pulling us in opposite directions, and it can feel a little overwhelming. If you're feeling this, you're right on time, but there's so much power and potential within this space. If you're feeling the desire to leave, to live on the land, to hug a tree, to swim in the stream, to swim in the ocean, if you're desiring to leave your life and sort of escape, that is very much the theme for now. We're being faced with so much density, with the complexity and sort of chaos of the world, and being asked to go about our daily lives. We're expected to still show up, right, in the same way. And so there's a lot of push and pull right now. I think that Gemini season in particular is revealing the wild and vast gaps in consciousness. The social splits, the polarity, all of the intensity of being pulled in so many different directions, and it's a lot for the mind. And as we know, when the mind is overwhelmed, when we have too many things rolling around in there, when we have so many different concepts, so much data to go through, the body becomes overwhelmed. And so if you're feeling a little bit dissociated, a little bit, maybe even in a freeze right now, it's a really powerful and important time to work with the nervous system, to work with the mind, but also the body. When we think about how much data we take in every single day, it's no wonder we're living with anxiety and mental health issues are on the rise, because there's so much that we're trying to grasp. We are trying to stay present with and process information that's happening across the globe. And we're doing it in a way that's extremely challenging as well, because we're receiving data from so many different places. One news source says this and another news source says that. You see a completely different story on Instagram. You see 10 different viewpoints on the same topic. And it's extremely overwhelming to sit with that, to be with what's happening while also being a conscious, loving, responsible, evolved human, and knowing part of that responsibility comes with not bypassing what's occurring, but being with it as much as you can. And so when we think about how much is being thrown at us, how much is in our collective consciousness right now, it's not surprising that some of us are struggling to really anchor, to ground, and to fully process all of what's coming through. I kind of felt that this would be building in this direction with Jupiter entering Gemini. What we have now, of course, is we have some overwhelm. I feel like there's a lot of mental stimuli. There's a lot that's coming through. There's a lot of data, but there's also a lot of possibility. And when we see all of the expansion happening, all of the potential, all of the possibility that's coming through in our own field, we also experience the density that comes through as well. Because as we know, as above, so below, when we're processing, when we're welcoming in more light, when we're upgrading and up-leveling, we are also having to process the density attached to that. The spaces within us that hold tight and contract in order to keep us small. Do you have a part of you right now that would rather contract than sit with the immensity of what's occurring in the world? The chaos. That's the part you want to work with. And so it's a little bit of a spiritual exercise this month of really working with the mind and the body, the mind and the higher heart, and finding ways to stay anchored and connected to love, connected to the heart, while we process all of the information and data that's coming in as well. It's mental gymnastics. It's really putting us in a place of power to use our own truth channel, to what I talked about last week, really pulling things through our own truth channel and grounding them out, pulling them into our hearts. What does it feel like? What do you really resonate with? We're all in different places in our evolution. Many of us experience things that others are not experiencing. We all have a very unique soul blueprint. So it makes sense when the data comes in that it activates different parts of all of us. It activates our own lived experiences that are held within our psyche and within our bodies. It activates our memories. It activates our own pain points and our own wounds. It activates our own fears. And so when you think about what's happening in the amount of information and data swirling around, it can feel overwhelming. Gemini in its shadow can be restless. It can be impatient. It can feel scattered and even chaotic. So if you're feeling that, it's so important to drop back into the body, back into the connection with the earth, into what's consistent, what's constant, and to allow that to be your anchor. Being a spiritual being, having a human experience is wild. We are, like I said, we're constantly oscillating between the material and the spiritual realm. And for me, I feel like lately I've really been dropping deeper and really getting clear on how I want my physical realm to look. And in true Gemini fashion, it's been feeling a little overwhelming, a little scattered. There's so much data coming in, so many options, so much potential. And I can get so heady. I can drop into the mind and I can let that sort of rule the show. I can let that pull me in a million different directions. And my medicine is always to anchor and to ground. With all of the swirling happening, it means there's so much more we have access to as well. So just remembering that even though it can feel overwhelming, and you might not be feeling overwhelmed. If you aren't, then that's amazing. It means, you're utilizing your tools and resources. This energy is hitting your chart in a really powerful and potent way. But for those of you that are feeling potentially overwhelmed, then that does not mean that this is negative. That just means that there's time and space that needs to be created to sort through what exactly you're experiencing. Gemini season started off with a bang, with Jupiter entering Gemini on the 25th, and there's really been so much acceleration since that point. And so sometimes when we have so many options and so many things coming through, it can be difficult to make a decision. And it's important to know when you're going into a freeze or when you're just taking your time to sort through information, when you're dissociating or disconnecting from the conflict within or from the challenge that you're being faced with and making a decision or getting clear on something. And I said in the beginning that this is a maturational point for Gemini. It's moving from the beginning degrees into the mid degrees and then into the late degrees of Gemini throughout the month. We start the week with a Venus Cazimi on June 4th. And so with the sun meeting with Venus, Venus will pass through the heart of the sun. It's an incredibly illuminating time. It's a time of realization, of illumination, of evolution. It's a rebirth point. And so when we think about Venus crossing the sun, it's a point of rebirth. It's a point of clarity. And with having so much of this duality, so much of the back and forth, the chaos, allow this week to reveal something to you. Be open. Feel your body, feel your feet, feel the earth that's holding you, feel your heart, and be open to what's coming through. You don't have to take everything as truth, everything as fact. It's important to stay open though. Themes around relationships, values, money, taking a look at who's in your life. Are they still in alignment, or are new opportunities and new relationships wanting to come through? Can you clear some of the clutter? The Cazimi is on June 4th. On June 6th, we have a new moon in Gemini, which means that Venus will be conjunct this new moon as well. At 16 degrees Gemini, we have the sun, Venus, and the moon all meeting. And with it being a new moon, it's a new opportunity. Like I said, it's an opportunity for rebirth, for starting something new, for clarity to drop in. We've been having so much Uranian energy and sort of building towards Gemini season. And even just with the state of the world, so much is being revealed. So what's being revealed for you? How can you sit with it, hold it, allow it to just be? without having to figure it out or make a decision. Gemini season can be so heady because it rules the mind and it rules communication, and it can be unstable in some ways. How can you let it just be there, the realization that comes through? Relational clarity and realignment. Who is truly supporting this evolution that you're moving through? And it's important to remember that people move in and out. Some people you might be really close with during certain portals. The relationship and the person has and holds the exact medicine that you need for that time. And then they might move on, or they might pull back a little bit and come back in another chapter when you're needing their medicine again. This can oscillate. In Gemini season, we have a tendency to stay more at the surface, to be more of a social butterfly, to not go as deep. But with Jupiter currently trine Pluto, maybe there's an opportunity here to go a bit deeper with someone you're connected to, with a friend, a romantic relationship. What is being revealed when Pluto is trine Jupiter, the planet of expansion and opportunity? There's an opportunity somewhere in the underworld. I know for myself, I have just been meeting these expansions of consciousness where the veil is just dropping over and over and over again. And I feel like every day I wake up with a new realization. And if I didn't have my tools, I would feel like I was going crazy because there's so much that's swirling around, and I feel like I'm in a bit of a spiritual washing machine. I'm seeing so much of the noise between the poles, both collectively and individually, and I think that this year is a little bit about that. And so when we have this much Gemini energy that's unchecked and we don't have tools or resources, this is the kind of energy that can lead to, a psychic break or complete overwhelm, depression, even when the nervous system collapses. Total dissociation. It's very restless. And so when we think about the amount of information and data that's coming through, like I said, for myself, it's been veils just dropping everywhere. Not even about just the collective and the world and why we're here and what we're doing, but also in my own life. Realizations. I feel like the fast forward button has been pressed on my evolution. And so when we think about that, there's so much opportunity here to anchor and to find an anchor in order to process all of what's coming through. And for myself, with it being so much of this Gemini energy, like I said, it can feel restless. So I've been feeling this fear come up around being behind, around not having made decisions yet that I need to make. And it's so important to remember we're all on our own timeline, and you aren't behind. It's all happening exactly as it's meant to. Don't let the mind and body split off. It's time for them to unite. And this is why this Jupiter and Gemini transit is an opportunity to bridge the mind and the heart, the mind and the body. One of the powers of Gemini is its curiosity and its ability to hold complexity and varying views at the same time. There's so much power in honoring that that many truths can exist at once. This is what will move us through as a collective, is gray and nuance, and listening to opposing views and listening to one another and allowing there to be complexity. Something that really resonated with me is that when we're operating in black and white, we're operating from a really young place, a really young part. And that's because at that age, everything was very black and white. It was very linear. As we grow and we mature and we age, we move through these thresholds, these waves of consciousness and light that allow us to hold more. And so the more we grow and evolve, the more complexity we can hold. And that medicine is needed more now than ever in the world, is the knowing, the understanding, the love and the compassion for someone who thinks differently than you, for someone who's on a different path. Love unites and fear divides. And so when we think about the intensity of now, how much fear is present, fear is really the opposite of love. And if we allow that to rule us, we'll keep moving further and further and further away from connection. We're already a quite avoidant society. And if we allow this fear to separate us even more, we'll separate off from ourselves. So another part of this week and another part of this Jupiter trine Pluto energy is learning how to be with many different truths and honoring that someone else's truth might not be yours, but that doesn't make it wrong. That doesn't make it bad. Our answers are found in our sameness, in the gray, in the complexity, in the nuance. And so let this Venus Cazimi bring more love into your heart, help you to shed some of the heart walls, to find more sameness. And I also want to mention, this is something I talk about a lot, but I like to remind myself of this and you all whenever it comes into my consciousness. But when we're nearing a big up-leveling or threshold crossing, or when we're moving into a major upgrade, we will be met with our deepest fears because that's their job. Our humanness, the material realm, really, we just seek safety. We seek security. Honor the parts of you that want to contract, that want to feel secure, that need to know. Love them, give them exactly what they need so that you can cross the threshold more whole, more integrated, and more in love. Because of the amount of data that's available to us, what we know is happening across the globe. And so there's so little that we have access to as far as tools and resources to help people. It can definitely send us into, more of a freeze state, or more of a state of shutdown or procrastination, or wanting to contract and be small and just, dissociate and watch TV, or dip into our favorite series or whatever it is. And honestly, that's needed sometimes, right? Because we can't be with what's happening in the world all the time, 24/7. It's too much. But what we can do is we can resource, and we can find and anchor and love and attune to the part that feels really afraid right now, that feels like shutting down or not taking an action, the part that feels like it's hopeless because the world is falling apart, or, this is all part of this time. The world is falling apart. A lot of things are crumbling that weren't working any longer. And we have to stay present with that knowing and anchor more deeply into what we do know, which is that love can carry us through. Connection can carry us through. Life is fleeting. This life that we're living is not permanent. It's only a stop along our evolutionary path. And so the more we can let go of our gripping to what feels familiar and safe, the more we can deepen into our knowing that we are safe and we are loved. Our inner union, our union with self, our union with source, is what really carries us through. It's where we'll find the peace we so desperately seek. There will probably be tests and opportunities this week to speak your truth, especially through this month. There will be that we're crossing a lot of different maturational thresholds to honor what our truth really is, and to communicate it in a way that's coming from the heart and not from the wound. To not react, but to respond from the heart, to connect with our own inner truth and to respond from that place. There might be a lot more data coming through this week with the Cazimi. We have a Mercury Cazimi on the 14th of June as well. So we have the solstice. So there's quite a bit of illumination and light that's entering in June. And so let yourself be with the chaos. Find your anchor. Trust in where you're being led. Trust is what carries us through. And remember, having fear surface is a sign that you're going deeper, that you're traveling deeper. Fear is sort of like a signal that you're reaching where you need to be and to go. It's an indicator that says you're reaching a threshold. You're pushing through something that was familiar and safe once, and you're expanding out of that. Fear and expansion coexist. They're often found together. They're like two similar minerals that are often found in the same mine because they work together. Fear really helps us expand. And when we can see it in that way as like sort of a signal or an indicator that we're moving in the right direction, that we are challenging ourselves, that we aren't staying small, but that we're pushing up against our walls of familiarity and comfort, then it can be exciting. It can be a signal that there's a lot of precious, nutrient-dense material to work through within this space. If we can be with and sit with the nuance, the complexity, there's so much that can be mined from that place. It's so important. The card that I pulled today was so spot on. It's almost laughable. It was so spot on. It's amazing. But it's the Elephant card from the Untamed Elemental deck. And it speaks exactly to this. It's all about complexity. And it says, Elephant is a steadfast monarch, matriarch, and servant. Royal by nature, her presence is felt as the trumpets announce her determined march. She is loyal and devoted to elders and children alike, and reminds us that the way we choose to exercise our power influences how those around us will wield theirs. A true leader, she leaves a deep footprint for others to follow so they don't lose their way. Majestic Elephant is a reminder that more than one thing can be true. She asks you to validate your wild, dynamic, creative desires while also honoring your fears. She wants you to set aside linear thinking and welcome support from your ancestors. She courts you to honor two seemingly opposing truths with the same degree of respect. Free yourself from seeing the world through a binary lens and allow the fullness of your complexity to pour forth. This radical act of self-acceptance removes the obstacles that might have once seemed insurmountable. It opens a door to miracles. Most importantly, it paves the way to your wholeness. When it's balanced, you feel curious, accepting, regal, and sovereign. When it's imbalanced, you feel radicalized perspectives, stuck in circular thinking. And to bring into balance, gift-giving, acts of service, acceptance of self and others, even if it feels unwarranted. And this is so true when we think about leadership and how it's all about embodiment, about how we move through the world, about our curiosity, asking questions. I feel like the best leaders are those that ask more questions than provide answers. Polarity sells, and we have to remember that. Separating us out, zoning in on one very small, narrow, black or white perspective is easy because it divides us. But holding complexity and holding nuance does not sell. It doesn't sell through the media. And so it's important to remember when you're going into that very narrow space that there's so much power in expanding out of it and letting many things be true at once. I'm sending you all so much love. Thank you for being here. I'm recording this from St. Louis. I'm helping my parents move this week, so there's a lot happening in my world and feeling lots of movement and fast-paced energy and having to do a lot of self-care. I hope you all are feeling self-resourced and supported by friends, loved ones, community. Even if you just feel the support through this microphone, I'm here with you. We're walking this path together. I'm sending you so much love. See you next week.